Howdy, folks. I am the Constant Way, and I'm here with Robbie. We're continuing our updated series on God Overview in 2024 with Krognar, the next god, out of the starter box. I'm going to start by
Do
going
it.
over the divine gifts of Krognar before we get into the champion pool and warband overview. And so, Robbie, you want to kick us off with that warband bonus?
Yeah, sure. The warband bonus for Krognar is the FG recall for one action instead of two. We've listed that here in our very scientific ratings as great. Um, it's definitely in the top contention for best warband bonus in the game. Getting your heroes back to the effigy to either hide them or bank a soul is just huge. Um, So I have trouble thinking of too many other warband bonuses that would be rated better than this one.
Well, and this one opens up plays that normally are just totally unsafe, right? So Soul Harvest for two actions, recall for one. Get a charge, do a damage, pop a toxin or something like that, recall for one.
Yeah,
Um, like the flexibility is endless, and it means you're keeping any advantage that you may have in a game, or just doing denial to your opponent. Cool
yeah,
stuff.
very strong. I mean, getting back to the effigy for offensive or defensive purposes is huge.
Moving on to the Sacred Artifact, the Umbra Sphere is a zero fate defensive artifact that when your effigy power Shadow Dance is declared, friendly heroes within 2 hexes of the Umbra Sphere bearer are considered champions. Krognar for purpose of Shadow Dance only. Additionally, bearer gains the ability to place down Shadow Orbs via the Shadow Rift zero action ability, which can synergize well with Rakir, Baron, Cradle, etc. We've put this one down as eh. What's up with that?
Yeah, I mean this is one of the few sacred artifacts in the game that you might just not have a use for in some games. If you bring all champions, then the part about non-champion models is not used at all. And depending on what you brought in your warband or what you want to be playing on the table, you might just not bring models that need the shadow orb ability, right? I think Rakir is one of the most commonly banned models in Krognar. So as much as he would love the ability to have another person putting orbs down that he can step through and charge from, it is there's going to be plenty of situations where you don't have Rakir on the table to take advantage of that. So
Right,
I
and
that's
then
why I think we probably put it in this category.
makes sense. And Zarin already can teleport back to the effigy, so if he's your only Shadow Orb user, one, he doesn't get to do that until he's level 3, and then two, he could just 1A recall using that Warband bonus. So yeah, this one a little temperamental. It may or may not come up. So overall, can be good.
Yeah, I mean, I've used it on Yorgoth just to be like, all right, zero action. I'm going to get +1 melee from standing next to a shadow orb.
Yeah, that
And we
seems good.
talk about some other use cases later, but yeah, it's the usability I think that makes it lower on the scale.
Cool. Well, it's all about enabling that FG power, so let's talk about the FG power. Shadow Dance. Friendly champion of Krognar heroes can immediately be placed adjacent to friendly Shadow Orb or friendly effigy. Heroes that are placed as a result of Shadow Dance and friendly summoned models cannot target the enemy effigy this round. Models placed by Shadow Dance cannot be placed in the opposing warband's deployment zone. So I feel like there was one sentence of ability and then two sentences of, but not this. That tells me something, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it speaks to the strength that an ability like this has to just place models somewhat unrestricted across the table. The fact that there's a couple of caveats there can be kind of hints as to how powerful this ability has been and some of the adjustments that have been made over time in the patch cycle to make sure that it's not being a little abusive. Because I don't think many of us would enjoy having an entire warband show up right on our effigy. So um, yeah, I mean regarding the power level, I think that's a starting statement. But it's flexibility on this one, right? Like offensively, defensively, um, the somewhat limitless outside of those couple of caveats. So I mean, what are some of your favorite things that you've either done or seen used on the Shadow Dance FG power?
Oh man. So for me, I've got it's got three primary use cases, right? The first would just be for safety, or hey, you're in trouble. This is something that you can do during the community phase. Pull someone back. You've got that warband bonus already, but this is an interrupt almost. So that's great. You can also use it offensively, which is actually my favorite use case, where like you've got a shadow orb up next to some poor enemy hero, and suddenly three Krognar heroes all show up, ready to beat face with all of their actions. You've got say a lug drug and a Yorgoth there, ready to just pound them into the dirt, and get a whole bunch of gang ups from that. So that's a really awesome use case. And then another one that might be a little more niche, but like if you've lined up, like there's a split soul pit map where you got left and right, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna gamble. It spawns on the left, and then oops, it spawns on the right. That turn two. All right, well maybe you want to pop your FG power, move your Soul Gazer over to the pit, and grab that because that can be a big tempo shift. Getting that first soul, um, really important. So the best use cases of it though, probably going to involve all three of those applications, right?
Yeah, and I mean it's playing your whole warband, right? So you can have one person that's getting placed offensively, going to secure a kill, one person that's being pulled back because they already did it last turn, and they're exposed. Um, I think some other, obvious something we didn't even mention yet is like just defensively using it against opposing effigy powers, right? I think a lot of Krognar players will say they like going second because they can respond to an offensive effigy power being called, and trying to blunt that a little bit by moving models away from the models who just gained a big benefit that they're only going to get once. And then another kind of niche use is you can take a shrine, right? The way the community phase steps go, say you're going second, it would be unwise to put a model on a shrine, because your opponent's going to get to go first and could attack them. Well, you can collect the benefit of the shrine, and then in your FG power phase, pull that model back, and not have to pay that cost. So I think it's a lot. The FG power is a lot about taking something from your opponent and not having to pay what the typical cost would be.
Yeah, makes sense. And the avatar bonus just sort of leans a little bit further into that, with Zarin counting as a shadow orb. So it gets a little more flexibility in that, like, okay, you can put four shadow orbs effectively, or have four shadow orbs effectively on the table. But I think we rated this one because might really not need that.
Yeah, I mean, does Zarin even really benefit from it himself? Like, again, kind of. If there's three orbs on the table, he can shadow step from himself, but it's just a very situational power. Now, it's attached to an incredibly good model, so who also enables other things about Krognar, through his own placement of orbs. So you're still going to see Zarin in a lot of Krognar lists. His avatar bonus is just kind of there.
Yeah, he's the full package himself already. The avatar bonus is just icing on the
Yeah.
cool. So one, it seems like it's really all about enabling this movement and the unfair trades and so on and so forth. One caveat, though, I think we want to make sure we make is threes versus fives. So in threes, moving around the table doesn't tend to be quite as impactful because it's a smaller board, and so you really didn't get that far out of danger, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been gushing a lot about what you can do with both the Warband bonus and the effigy power. Most of that is in relation to the 5v5, because it's such a large table, right? And there's more models that can be impacted and so on and so forth. So we can get in on the threes strategies in a little bit more detail on when we talk about that Warband, but it's a good point to make here at the front.
Yeah, don't
I
be
think a lot of our
discouraged.
opinions, yeah, a
Yeah,
lot of
don't
our
be.
opinions are based in fives.
Yeah, and don't be discouraged if your first few threes games as Krognar are you getting your face punched in and being like, well, wait, my abilities aren't helping me very much. But we'll get there with threes. All
Yeah,
right.
I think last closing thought on this is just that a lot of these bonuses, in fact, all of these bonuses are skill based, right? They're not raw stat bonuses. They're not telling you you just get some benefit automatically. It's all stuff that you have to choose to use, and you have to do so in a way that maximizes your benefit. So very skill based faction.
Sure. Moving on to the champions of Krognar. We've got again a fairly broad pool of champions. I think just looking at the numbers, like you've got four supports and three soulless, that might be a bit heavier versus other gods. But what are some of the themes that we see running through Ragnar's champions?
I mean, it's a lot of mobility, right? You've got Rakir, Cradle, Zarin, who can all get places using their Shadow Orb abilities. Ramona, Styx, Cavardo, all different ways to either move your models or your opponent's models.
I mean, heck,
Um,
even the tank here, one of the tanks here has Mystic Step and his push with his shield, so lots of
yeah,
opportunities.
yeah. So that's it. It's and then it's kind of toolboxy stuff, right? You know, the shooters and snipers aren't like necessarily raw damage dealers. Step aside for a moment, Kogan, while we talk about the others. But you know, Abathus, Multi, Victor, all a little more skill based, apply more than just damage. You know, control elements in all three of those models, and then there's Kogan. He just shoots people.
Yeah, we like Kogan. He kills things dead. And that's a good call out though. Even beyond just the shooters, like even looking at the assassins and bruisers, like they all kind of require a little bit more handholding, a little bit more, I don't know, skill expression than someone like say a Thorgar or a Brock might, right? Where it's just sort of push forward, smash face. You know, Rakir really wants an investment in a Vorpal Blade and then maximizing his shadow orbs and maybe someone to set up poison for him. Yorgoth wants that level 2 an investment to get to his momentum ability. Piper wants a backstab buddy. Like there's a lot of like layers that you really want to use to unlock the potential of these heroes.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think
really,
Rakir is a really interesting mix of skill and luck because he takes a lot of skill to pilot, but at the same time, sometimes if you roll that toxin and you just you see double sixes, you just win a game off of that. So I love banning Rakir because a good opponent will outplay me and a bad opponent will outroll me. So I just don't want to see him on the table.
that's fair. And it looks to me like the final sort of element of Krognar Champions is that Solist pool. Like that pops to me hard just because all three of those Solists are really good on their own. Kroll with his
Yeah,
Bloodloss, Saren with his whole suite of abilities, Nias who can sort of flex into frontline and also set up for Rakir. I think Krognar probably plays a better soul game than any other god.
yeah, yeah. Especially when you consider all these soloists have one action recall. Yeah, not much more to say there. Just a great lineup.
Cool. So if we're looking outside this incredible champion pool, I think the first thing I thought about was like threat overload, where look, you've got these, we've said these damage dealer champions require a little bit more babying, a little bit more handholding, but they've got such incredible output and such incredible peaks that your opponent has to be really careful about how they engage with you. And so if you just double down and add in, say, a Fazil or a Zonia that can also just go in and one-shot people while also benefiting from that one action warband bonus to recall, that can essentially overload your opponent with threat vectors and give you an edge there.
Yeah, and I mean they're comboing up on the mobility. Both those models can either gain extra movement through dash or Zonia's level 2. And yeah, I love Fazil with any of these other models that can grant curse or poison. So yeah, no more comments there really. I mean the if you want to go a different avenue, that whole reliables line that you place there is just a little bit of reducing your cognitive overload, right? Like um, you don't want to have to rely on completely outplaying your opponent. You'd like to have just some models that hit hard, and Drogoth and Thorgar are both great for that category. Um, Drogoth has a minor synergy with Krognar, and then he has Leap, and so for two actions, one Leap, one Recall, you can basically get out of dodge. It's very rare that he wouldn't be able to get out of a situation, and Thorgar is more than capable of killing a model and being in a dangerous position. So would love to benefit from a number sphere holder nearby, pulling him back.
Well, I'd call out Thorgar's doesn't have leap, but he has an almost guaranteed push whenever he wants to for one action. Just by enraged assaulting and attacking somebody, he'll get all the pushes he needs, and then can recall back to safety if he wants. Now, one thing you might be a little surprised is Brock isn't on the old reliables list, and I think the biggest thing there is competition for both the level 2 and the Vorpal Blade. Um, Again,
Yeah,
like a lot of those champions really want some extra investment and setup that Brock also kind of wants. I like the Drogoth and Thorgar as they're a little bit more independent.
Yeah, I've got no problem with either of those models not having an item for the first couple turns of the game. So,
Cool. And
so
then
what?
we've got that last category there, the
Yeah,
soul and dice manipulation. What's up with that?
yeah. I mean, I think it's more than fine to just stick with the main solace you've got in God with the champion pool, but Bale and Sarna can really lean heavily into the soul game with their ability to bounce to the other solace. Sarna's ability to move a soul onto your side, make it you not have to overextend as much, or place it within two of a model who can now soul harvest and one action recall. So I like that as an option. And then Saiyan, Augury combos both in the soul game and in the assassin game. Between Rakir or if, say, you're running Zonia, like their fate abilities would love the ability to keep the high dice and reroll the low dice. Um, I mean, can you think of any other reasons why you would take Saiyan?
I mean, I almost don't want to say it, but Saiyan can soul strip via soul beckon, right? And so if you're bringing both Saiyan and Kroll, you are layering on those areas of control and the ability to steal the souls, the few souls that your opponent may get because you're so slippery. Now you'll just pull them off and harvest them up. So, like, I think Saiyan's got a lot going for her, and even could earn a place amongst the storied members of the Krognar Solist champion list.
Yeah, I think you should take that last part out in editing. Let's not talk about the double soul strip. Okay.
You think I'm doing editing?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Great champion pool for Krognar. Let's go ahead and move on to our first warband, where you're going into threes blind pick. So you're a new Judgement player, just wanting to hit the table. We're bringing Skull, Rakir, and Zarin. What do we think's going on in threes? We gave a little bit of a caveat in the overview. So how are we winning the game here?
Uh, I mean, Zarin's on the table there, right? So I would default to wanting to win the soul game. I think that Zarin is a unique challenge in threes in that if you can get him that early soul and start pumping out skeletons from relative safety, the action economy gets insane, right? By default, a warband of three heroes should have access to only three action points, but Zarin himself can get access to nine if he gets all three skeletons out. So you can really start to push your opponent out, push them around, take up space with the skeletons occupying hexes. Um, it's tricky to pull off, but I think as you noted just a moment ago and earlier in the summary, the threes v fives benefits of the god. The one action recall with a smaller table doesn't necessarily get you to safety. Um, Similarly, the effigy power, there's just not a lot of board space that you need to effigy power to or from. So when I have played Krognar threes, my goal is usually to set up shadow orbs in such a way that um, I'm going to be able to have a chance to harvest that first soul with Zarin, regardless of where it pops up. Right? Some of the threes maps have two souls, two soul pits. You can cover both of them effectively with that effigy power. So that's how I would look to use it. I mean, I'm sure there's some other applications you could think of. What are you looking to aim for?
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of the divine gifts, I'm honestly not getting a lot out of it. Like I'm leaning hard just on the quality of these champions that I'm putting on the table because they're all top tier. Like Skull is just a beefy pile of meat that can put out a surprising amount of damage. Set up for Rakir another damage once that level 2 with that big great axe knockdown. Rakir of course is phenomenal and can just one shot somebody with a good toxin. And Zarin never has a dead action, and he might have 9 live actions, like you called out. So like just the quality of the heroes that you're putting on the board, I think you can lean into and get a lot of value out of just a game.
Yeah, I think that the as a morale booster or constellation, I would just note that like in the core box, these three heroes are very good, but I think that the powers that be set up a very strong warband for them to go into in Donregar, Brock, and Saiyan. given that sand can make models immune to poison, and Darnagar can consume that first attack with a redirect. So don't feel too down about the fact that this warband is a kind of hard to pilot into that particular Ista warband. Um, I'd say it's 3v3. Roll some dice, have some fun. There's no surefire strategy that's gonna like win you a significant majority of the games. It I'd focus more my effort on trying to optimize for fives. Um,
All right. Well, speaking of fives, then let's move on to we're expanding out. We've got our starter box, and now we're adding another three heroes from just general retail. We're looking at Skull Rakir, Yorgoth, Relgoth, Piper, Nias, and Zarin. What kind of a game plan do we have?
I think this is pretty standard for Krognar. It's maybe a little more damage heavy because we chose to bring in Drogoth here. But you're trying to leverage your mobility. You've got double Soul Gazer, so you will guaranteed have at least one. And by virtue of having two, most people won't ban one of them because they know they're not really hurting your Soul game. Um, so I think setting up for trying to get that early Soul lead with a Harvest recall or effigy power into an aggressive Harvest recall is definitely part of the toolkit. And then again, broad enough damage that I think you can chip through most stuff um, on from an attrition standpoint. So, am I missing anything on win condition there?
I don't think so. I think people might like look at, oh shoot, well we only brought Skull one tank. Are we a little bit weak there? Looking at say board presence and setting up, do we have to rely on hit and run? And honestly, I think the answer is no. Like you've got Nias who can flex frontline with that Agi 5, hit that level 2, go up to Agi 6. She can heal, poison things to debuff them, hypnotize to stop big burst abilities. So I think you can comfortably play Nias on the front line as long as you're careful about gang ups. Same thing with Piper. He can duplicate self, he can enhance self. You can get him additional items like boots of stability are great for those high agi heroes. Um,
Yeah,
and then like Yorgoth can do his AoE knockdown ability to sort of again slow that incoming damage. So I think this actually has a deceptive amount of board presence if you're playing with the knowledge of what some of these can do.
yeah, yeah. And I think there's an interesting aspect of this is almost every one of these heroes can get out of dodge fairly simply, right? I'd say Nias maybe has the least ability to escape with a free soul. Um, Skull similar, but I just want to call out that his multiple heads means they don't get an extra die. So parting blows aren't quite as bad. But yeah, I think durability is probably the weak point of the list. You got to make up for durability with mobility, and maybe Piper off tanking and Nias off tanking. So,
Makes sense.
um,
Fate wise, what are we doing here?
well, you want one for Rakir every turn. I'd say you're starting the game wanting to get a skeleton out for Zarin. That's usually my game plan for him is don't wait for the skeletons to be free. Treat him like a summoner first and a soul gazer second. Um, Otherwise, it's items, right? Like we've got Yorgoth in here. We didn't really hit on Yorgoth in depth in the last hero overview, but the guy really wants level 2. And that might mean you're rerolling for a fate. It can be that important to get the monster kill. But otherwise, he's going to really benefit from like an armor shredder or a vorpal blade, either to get the crits, or if you think you can reliably get the crits, to shred through armor as you're spreading damage around. Um, Monster hunting wise, how would you tackle like a higher monster map with a warband like this?
I mean, an easy one is Drogoth with a hunter's knife, because he will obliterate models or monsters. Other than that, you've got enough damage here that I think you can mostly just deal with monsters as you need to. Like
Yeah,
you've got Piper, who's just a jack of all trades. He can go punch a monster. The only trick with Piper is he does want that backstab, and you typically don't want to be ending someone's activation and engagement there, so that can be a little dicey. You can also use skeletons to manage monsters, because monsters will hunt towards skeletons. And so, like, there may be a situation where you actually send a skeleton deep into enemy lines. The monster goes and chases after that skeleton, and now is on your opponent's side of the board and your opponent's problem. And so
Yeah.
that can be worth it, although you should be very mindful about how you're making the most out of those skeletons, because it's actually really strong as you can snowball the number of skeletons you have on the board. So think carefully if you're just throwing them away, either for monster management or to pick up a soul or anything like
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I said I like to spawn a skeleton that's there and on turn one, it should be clarified that like you also need to be defensive with that skeleton, right? They typically require 2 actions to kill just because they're 4 health. But if your opponent wasn't going to use those actions anyways, say on turn one, don't let them get free value out of killing a skeleton. Shout out to Mage Hand from Piper. That's another potential monster manipulation tool. Like he's got a 4 hex reach magical attack that can push from range. So that's a solid tool for pushing monsters into people or just getting them headed towards your opponent's effigy.
Ooh, dirty. Yeah, lots of tricks here, lots of stuff to learn with even just a basic Krognar warband. Let's move on into something a little more janky. So we've brought our fives variant, which I will take full blame or credit for the name of our triple D double dub. Uh, Now I can't take credit for this actual warband itself, Robbie. What is going on here? Because I'm seeing Rakir as our solo damage dealer, and that just puts a giant band target on his head. So I'm assuming I'm not playing my games with Rakir.
Yeah, yeah.
Where's
Until
my
you,
damage at? What can I do? Am I just soul gazing to win here?
yeah. Let's start by shout out to Sir Sneezy on the Discord. This was his brainchild. I played against it a couple times and with it once. I think Cradle is a model you're not going to see in a lot of warbands, but she's kind of the star of this show. Rakir is likely there just for ban bait, but you totally flex back into normal Krognar plan if he's not the ban. But main game plan, Lugdrug and Cradle with a leveled up Lugdrug. So Lugdrug declares Cradle as his ward. On turn one, the end goal of your turn should be Cradle is standing adjacent to Lugdrug with 3 Shadow Mists. Lugdrug is level 3 because he's killed the monster and read the Tome of Experience. And he should also have Bracer's Disruption on him. So that's easier said than done, right? For Lugdrug to get the kill on just his charge attack, you better do some damage with some other models. It's taking all of your fate. You're taking the fate you start the game with and the fate that you're earning off the monster to buy a 2 fate Tome of Experience. But what you're getting in that package is the ability to launch Lugdrug through the shadow door that Cradle has, her 3 Shadow Mist from, with the goal of putting him adjacent to a model, an enemy model that then Cradle Shadow steps to and hits 4 times, likely doing 20 damage.
So for those who may not know, what's the big deal with Lugdrug's level 3? What's he getting there?
So Lugdrug is all about supporting his ward, right? His level 2 ability is good. It is +1 to hit for models by his ward that Lugdrug is engaging, right? You also get to ignore the distraction penalties from the ward. So when Cradle is making attacks, she doesn't care if there are enemy models around her. That's really good, right? That's basically Bastion's thing. It's much more limited, but it's extra dice. But his level 3 is +1 damage to basic attacks for models that Lugdrug is engaging. So now, with the level 3 Lugdrug, Cradle is swinging with an extra die and an extra damage. And she has marked target. If you're landing next to your marked target, now you're effectively if we consider Lugdrug's normal friendly bonus as a stat bonus, you're going from 6 to 7 with marked target, 8 with a friend, 9 with Lugdrug's level 2. So now you're melee 9, and you're doing a 2, 3, 5 damage grid.
I think we're making Drogoth jealous here.
Yeah, I mean, all this stuff can apply to anybody. I think the shtick here is that Cradle has a unique ability to set up Lugdrug to be next to her, the model she wants to attack, in the same activation that she's going to do the attacks, right? Like, when people have previously tried to engineer this, you get Lugdrug to level 3. That probably doesn't happen until turn 3 or 4, right? if at all. You then like have to hope that when you charge Lugdrug in, he gets to stay next to the thing, and then his ward goes in on it. Cradle's doing that on her activation, right? So all that said, takes an incredible amount of setup. Cradle wants to end her or she wants to begin her activation with 3 Shadow Mists and adjacent to Lugdrug, and a Shadow Orb somewhere near enemy models, right? So the way you enable that is if you're in a scrum, Cradle can be gaining Shadow Mist from other models making attacks on enemy models within 2 hexes of her. You can also just not spend her Shadow Mist on healing. Lugdrug's a pretty beefy boy. He doesn't necessarily need to be topped off all the time. And then Lugdrug, I mentioned earlier, has bracers, right? So normally when making attacks against Lugdrug or Cradle, you want to push the two apart. But the bracers make that much harder, right? And where else are you going to spend Fate? Right? None of these heroes really need Fate.
Yeah, I mean, if Rakir gets banned, like, you got nothing. It's items, really.
Yeah.
Healing and
So
rerolls.
so the last part of that whole combination, I think, and again, not speaking with a ton of experience, played against it a couple times, played with it once. If anyone has questions about how this warband or a variant of it works, reach out to Source and Easy on the Discord. But Ramona with the Umber Sphere is allowing you to place orbs aggressively and usually not, die in return. I didn't even mention Ramona being involved in that melee that Cradle's doing, but she also incredibly enhances melee. And then you've got Skull, Lugdrug, Ramona, Cradle, 4 models that can protect other models either through mobility, healing, or defender abilities that redirect or give res or temp health.
Yeah, this seems really beefy. Like, this is not a Krognar bursty hit and run. This is a Krognar attrition list, isn't it?
Yeah. The game plan is Cradle tries to kill something every turn. That's very single target focused. It can be disrupted. Say someone pushes a tier 4 into you, and you just have no choice but to deal with it with Cradle. Well, now Cradle didn't kill anyone that turn, right? So
monsters
there's
seem like a bit of a weakness here.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do to monsters? You're going to, the Zarin skeletons, like we mentioned before. If you can engineer a Hunter's Knife onto Ramona or Skull, that can be an option. But like we talked about at the beginning, you're spending all your Fate on the Tome of Experience from Lugdrug. So any Fate items that you're getting onto your warband are going to be through monster kills or Center Shrine grabs. Cradle is also not equipped with any items under this plan, so getting her a Center Shrine pickup can be huge because you, again, aren't spending Fate on much else. All of a sudden, Cradle going and grabbing a Shredder or Vorpal Blade and a Glyph of Warding or Agility Boots. Just crazy. Now I'm just gushing about how fun this warband is when it works. I haven't seen it not work that well. I think the way that it wouldn't work is in the ban process. I mean, wait, you mentioned banning Rakir.
He's
After hearing
obvious,
me
right?
ramble about this, are you thinking that we ban Cradle? What do you think you would ban
I
if you had to
mean,
play against this?
yeah, you've pitched Cradle so hard, you would think, oh shoot, okay, I know the shtick here. I'll ban Cradle, but then like, what's stopping Ramona from being Lugdrug's ward and getting
Yeah,
all this juice? So maybe I guess it's Lugdrug. Like
that's
he
what
seems
I'm
to be
starting to
the
think.
crux. I don't know.
Yeah, I think level 3 Lugdrug. He just prints money. I think that everything I was saying about how Cradle can reposition him on her turn, that makes it the coolest combo. But I think if Cradle got banned, I would still just play Lugdrug. I'd make Ramona the ward. I'd do the Tome of Experience thing, and it's just going to take a little more planning to get the uh, the ward to be able to attack models that Lugdrug's engaging.
Well, plus like if Cradle gets banned, or even Rakir gets, or Lugdrug gets banned, you still have an incredible like Krognar list. You're not trying any gimmicks. You now have standard Krognar, which is really powerful. You've got Krull and Zarin and Rakir and Skull. Like, it's
Yeah,
it's so good.
Yeah, I think Lugdrug gets banned. I drop Cradle and I play standard Krognar, right? Which we kind of talked about in the last group. It's it's a bit more damage light, right? Like I think we kind of pointed that out in the last warband that we were going a little heavier on damage. If you lose Lugdrug and Cradle out of this 7, Rakir's going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting. Um, but you're being tricksy. You're probably leaning on Cruel and Zarin together to get the harvest game way in your favor, and then you're just gonna have to pick off a couple kills, right?
Yeah, and like
Um,
Skull can lean in, deal a little bit more damage. Maybe you hook Skull up with a Hunter's Knife or an Armor Shredder just to up his output. Reserving the Vorpal Blade for Rakir, but I think you've got game.
yeah, for sure. And before we close this out, I gotta hear you say the name of this warband again.
Oh man, it's the Double Dead Dual Wielding Wards, or the Triple D Double Double. Right?
Okay.
So, that's my favorite expression of it. But I'm sure others may have their preference. I think we went through
Excellent.
like 20 different cow puns before I landed on this one, but
Yeah, I was ashamed of, of being involved in this process during the brainstorming of this name, but yeah,
All
I think you
right,
found a winner. So
cool. Well, that's our Krognar overview. So, I mean, just to recap, like really high skill expression opportunity with Krognar, right? Can be a bit of a higher skill floor, but the quality of the champions are going to help carry you through, up to that floor. Limitless skill ceiling. It's a movement heavy god, and movement is both the most powerful, but also the most complicated thing to learn and use in Judgment. Right? Any
yeah, for sure.
any wrap up thoughts on Krognar here?
Yeah, I hate Krognar. They are they are hard to play. They're hard to play against. It's going to be a goal of mine this season to try and learn how to play Krognar because I, every time I get matched up against a good Krognar player, I'm kind of just awaiting the loss.
It's strong. It's strong. And no, I love Krognar. It's a little bit of a pivot away from my normal like basic run forward smash face Brelin playstyle that I enjoy, but just the champions you get to play with, the actual like forgiving nature of having that warband bonus, one AP recall, effigy power. There's a lot of get out of jail free cards where you're like, oh, I screwed up. Oops, bail, bail, bail. And that'll save you when other gods couldn't. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
this is
there's some
powerful.
good pivots either into or from Tomas and Brulin with the champion overlap. So I found as I was building up like my painted model collection and I wanted to play painted, and I was trying to look at like, okay, where's my gaps? How can I have the least amount of models that I have to paint? I found myself starting with a Tomas Warband and eyeing Krognar, and similarly Brelin. I found a lot of similarities there. So,
Nice. Very cool. Good stuff for expanding out. All right, that's our overview of Krognar. We'll jump into the other gods in future videos, but thank you so much for hanging out. Thanks again, Robbie, for coming on. Really appreciate it.
yeah, thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, and if you want to dive in more deeper, get in the comments. Tell us what you saw, what you liked, what you heard, what you thought we missed. Jump into the Discord, the Judgment Discord. I'll put a link in the description. Talk Dojo. Tell us we're wrong. Always happy to chat more Judgment. So with that, we'll close things out. Thanks everyone. Catch you later.